Welcome to the Solemn Vanguard channel. Today we are once again doing a meta tier list, this time for the V format, otherwise previously standard, but now it's V standard or V premium, whatever. It's all the V cards. So we just had BRO for this format, so now we can also add some data to our assumptions, even though honestly the meta just hasn't changed. The last clan collection didn't really change much. They just added Heal Guardian, so certain decks were slowed down a little, but the best decks mostly stayed the best decks. The new bosses didn't really do much. So this might as well have been made in spring, and most things would have stayed the same. With that being said, certain decks were pushed closer to each other in my opinion. So let's talk about that regardless. So first of all, we're going to talk about Shadow Paladin. Now you could split this off into multiple things, of course, like you could talk about Revengers or you could talk about Luard, but we're going to try and stick to like the best deck within a given category, just like we did for our premium tier list. So for Shadow Paladin, that would be Luard. Maybe with the coming clan collection, with the new Raging reverse thing, that might change, but for now Luard is definitely the best deck within Shadow Paladin. I think it neatly goes into S. Of course it can brick, you know, you need to have your specific drag heart, you don't want a driver. Some people are not playing Brandwin, so they really have to get lucky just to even, you know, get the correct ride. But regardless, it's a strong deck, and if it can play until the late game where it really, you know, starts scaling like crazy, it probably wins. So for that reason, S in my opinion. It can also guard pretty decently against Gabriel because it also has those two great ones in the front, which can then intercept together with the other guy. It can grind out Prism. You know, Prism could also rush the shit out of it, and this just dies before it can get to that late game. So that matchup is like a bit of a coin flip, really, depending on which pieces you see and who goes first. But overall, you know, they both have decent odds. Next, we have Spikes. Spikes... I don't know, man. I like Spikes. I have my Spikes cards, but I think it goes into B no matter which build you're going for. Whether you talk about Verminous or Rising or whatever else, you know, it just can't really keep up with these other decks. It's pretty piece reliant. It basically does what Luard and Prism do better, and you have to put in more work, and you don't plus the same way. And it's just like, okay. Next, we have Tachikaze. In my opinion, Tachi is in a similar boat. Spino doesn't really do much. In Premium, Spino is good because the follow-up is Neburos, which is insane. Here in Standard, it's kind of, okay. Anger Blader was scary, but then it got hit, right? So now it's at 1 or something. Maybe you high roll with it, but that got even worse because of heal guards. I don't know. Tachi, you know, without Neburos, Neburos really saves that in my opinion. Dogma and Neburos are just such game changers in Premium. But then in V, again in B, I can still be scared of these decks, you know, with enough sacking and some luck and all of that and playing them well. You know, they can definitely be decent, but they're not at the same level as Luard whatsoever. Next, we have Angelfeather. Angelfeather is definitely top tier. I think it's even better than Shadows. Of course, we're talking about Gabriel here, and none of the others are even, you know, remotely relevant. If we were talking about anything else, it might go here or here even. But Gabriel, wow, the Hamiel thing. We've seen it on stream as well, right? They go, oh, here's a crit, here's a crit, here's a crit. Please guard 100,000 and you can't call Sentinels. GG. Now, of course, on the flip side, it can also just see nothing. And then it has to play a really slow, grindy game and can probably lose to stuff like Prism and so forth. But when it high rolls a little, it's a super scary deck. Might be the best or second best deck when it does see that high roll. Next, we have Neo Nectar. Neo Nectar is kind of what devs? I'm not very scared of Neo Nectar in either format. That's sad. But we'll see. Maybe the next reverse, is it reverse Cecilia that we're getting? Maybe that changes it. But overall, Neo Nectar. Then we have Aqua Force. You can either talk about Tavas or about Maelstrom. I think despite Maelstrom, you know, getting top 4 yesterday, I don't think one singular top is that strong of an indicator. Just like we had Nova Grappler topping in Premium and I put them in B as well, despite, you know, having that top. You know, one top isn't the strongest data, and if we then look at, you know, playtesting, Aqua is just alright. It's in this alright category. To me, if I had to name the categories here for V, I would say S is like the top tier decks. Those I would expect to top reliably. A is still strong. B is, you know, decent. Okay, and then C, I don't know. In B and C starts getting muddy. Tavas without Pursuit Assault. Because again, oh, this tier list is about English, of course, because I play English. I don't play Japanese. Maybe with Pursuit this goes whoop, just like that. But we don't have the promo. Bushi, please bring it. Next, Bermuda Triangle. I saw a lot of people crying about Bermuda this weekend. It's a boring deck. I played it. My 4 losses, because I played in 2 regions, so my 4 losses were non-games, just missing grade 3, not seeing any prisms, like 0, so you use Vert, bind. I have nothing to bind. GG. Those were the 4 losses. I don't know how that happened. The deck is supposed to be super consistent, but it's boring, man. It does the same thing. It draws a billion cards. The thing is, though, at their best, you know, the best Prism game is weaker than the best Angel game. And the best Prism game is weaker than the best Luard game. The thing is that the worst Luard game is much, much worse than the worst Prism game. And same for Gabriel. Prism is very consistent. And so for that reason, you know, you could argue it's here. But even in Japan, we don't see it, you know, having the same results. I actually think that Angels might be a better deck. But with that being said, I would like to see it hit, because God, this format has been so boring. These same decks just being the best since February or January earlier this year. I don't know, man. You know, you can argue about these standings, like, oh, is the consistency or the power more important? But I think everyone agrees that they're kind of like too much. The other deck, however, you know, let's talk about all of the options, is Melody. And Melody Plon is actually at its best probably stronger than all of this. It's just that if it bricks, it's really, really shit. So, you know, Melody Plon, also a strong deck, would also be in the S category in my opinion. And then in the Prism deck, you can actually split off into 2. You have either the deck that WCC brought, just the most basic Nectaria, Spiana, okay? But you also have the Highlander version. The Highlander version can high roll sometimes, you know, it can deck in it in the end game and so forth. But its early game isn't as spectacular because it's not maxing out on those Lizelots. But what's interesting about that is that some people were talking about, oh, we need to hit Lizelot to balance Prism. And it's like, good luck. The Highlander version barely runs Lizelot. So if you want to hit Prism, Lizelot ain't it. Ellie, you know, Ellie would probably be a decent hit, but you're punishing a lot of other Bermuda decks for that. I think probably if you want to hit Prism, the most wise hit would be Choice Restrict, Lizelot, and Ellie and Vert. Or maybe Ellie and Vert alone is enough. I don't know how they'll fix that. I also think, though, if you're gonna hit Prism, you should probably also hit Gabriel. Even though I have the deck, I've already maxed it out a little bit. I really like Angels. But it's like, I understand if you take away your consistent contender, everyone's just gonna play the high contender. Whoa, so much more fun. So you might want to Choice Restrict Hamiel with the damage adding grade 1 so that there's at least counterplay again, or something along those lines. I don't know, maybe other Angel aficionados, is that the word? I might have input there, but then again, those will probably just say, oh, it doesn't need hits. Nah, it probably needs hits. It's been too long, nothing in the format changing. I think, honestly, everything in this S category should probably get a hit in some way, just so the format stops being boring. And this is not V hatred specifically. Like, it's been the same for a year. It's a bit much. As for Luard, I'm not sure. Maybe you want to hit Apocalypse Bat. Some people don't even run it, but you know, at least you take away some of the high roll. I don't know. Next we have DI. Sharot, still pretty scary. Bladewing, absolute joke. I think Sharot and Number of Terror are as good as they were in Butterfly. It's just that these other decks, once again, are doing very similar things much more consistently and more easily. It is what it is. I think DP is solid. It might be either here or here. Gears, I think, goes into A. This is our first deck that we can cement into the A category. I think Gears is very scary. You know, if they get a bit luckier than the S tier, they can beat anything in this S tier. They're not S tier in my opinion, you know, but they're pretty close. They're somewhere in the middle of this A tier. It's a solid deck. Next we have Genesis. I would say Genesis is at the top of A. Specifically with Valkyrion. Valkyrion did get weaker, you know, with the heal guards because it no longer has that big of a high roll. But I think despite that, if it can live through a turn after their high roll was, you know, failed or something like that, and they can because they basically have like 8 perfect guards or 4 as trails and 4 crit sent, depending on which you run. They can usually, you know, tank another turn, and then they get to do that turn they just did that was slightly weakened because of heal guards again. it's still a solid deck. Of course, it can brick because of weird ratios and so forth, but like, I wouldn't underestimate them. They're still a solid deck in my opinion. Next up, we have Gold Paladin. I think Gold Paladin goes straight into S. Spectral Duke is a really strong deck. Percival is an unfair as hell card. Pretty sure Percival needs to get hit, because any Gold Paladin deck ever is gonna run this card. And it'll basically be the Wonder Wrestle of Gold Paladin. Oh, watch out! Are we gonna give Gold Paladin a good card? No, we can't, because it has Percival. Oh, too bad. Sorry, man. Here's some junk support for years and years and years until Percival is gone, because Percival will break anything good the clan gets. And that's sad to me. That's the Silent Tom problem from years ago in OTT. And we've seen other clans have the same issue. That's the Genesis problem with Taro. How are you gonna give insanely good cards if they already have one game breaking card? And Percival kind of feels like that. So yeah, Spectral Duke also a really strong boss, of course. But Percival kind of pushes that over the edge. Again, it's just my opinion. I think everything in S needs a hit just so that the clan collection cards can finally shine a little bit and so that they don't have to power creep even more in the coming clan collection. We'll see how that turns out. Next, Grand Blue Nitros, of course. I mean, you can also play pure Beatrice, but a hybrid is usually better in my opinion. I would say this is somewhere at the top of A, either like this or like this. Overall, a very strong deck. The Beatrice on ride on the high roll can be very scary. Obviously, the Nitros endgame is incredible with the Skull Dragons and so forth. Can greed shade the protective pieces to hand, has all those protect markers to live through almost anything. It has access to a lot. In my opinion, it did get worse because of heal guards. Being able to, you know, slow down Nitros' on ride when they go into the big Skull Dragon plays because they navigated and had a godly hand or something like that. And then you swing with Skull Dragon and they go -2 crit. That kind of slows down the deck by a big margin, but regardless, I still think it's a very strong deck. It's just that when you're comparing it to some of the other decks in S tier, the amount of work you're putting in, these other ones just do it for basically free or have something unfair going on like Angelfeather. It's a bit much. I'm still not sure if I want Bermuda here at the top. I think it's best deck, but I don't think it's by a massive margin, especially because, again, Spectral, Luard, and Angelfeather, their power ceiling is higher than Prism. It's just that their floor is lower than Prism. And so you'll see Prism be very, very consistent. Next, we have Great Nature. Probably going to be Isabelle featuring Chanoir as a rearguard. Overall, I think this goes into this category as well. It's not something I'm super, super afraid of. I don't think it's in A. It obviously can be scary. It can still win. Again, everything in B, in my opinion, can still be a scary deck you need to not randomly get sacked by. But it's not as good as Nitros and all of these other clans. Next, we have Kagero. Obviously, this is going to be mostly Overlord. I think this, you know, the high roll of Overlord got kind of weakened because of heal guards. But, you know, if you don't have the heal guard, you can still just randomly flop over and die to it. So I do think you have to respect that regardless. I'm putting it at the top of B for this reason. It's basically, it used to be like a Gabriel, but then Gabriel got the new support in Clan Collection, making it a bit more versatile, and Kagero did not get that. So in my opinion, it's going to be something like this. Next up, Link Joker. If it's just Chaos, I'm probably putting it somewhere here in B, but I actually think Messiah's high roll is so disgusting that it can go into A. If Messiah high rolls, maybe it has Burst Monk, finds the grade 3 or something like that. If it gets that high roll, it's disgusting, but of course it doesn't always get that high roll. Overall, Messiah kind of works like a weaker Prism, you know, with the Volco plays, but it can also high roll into those early on, and again, then it gets way scarier. I don't know, it's somewhere here in A, it might be bottom of S, but I think this is a fair place to put it. Then we have Mega Colony. Yeah, I mean, Giraffa maybe makes it better. Cradle markers are pretty good, but I don't know. It's probably better than Neo though. I'd put it somewhere like this. When it comes to B and C, things get a bit wonkier. I think S and A are much more neatly defined. Next, we have Murakumo. I think Mura can be at the bottom of A purely because Yasue is scary. Their overall ceiling is quite high. I wouldn't put it past them to randomly do well. So yeah, I'm putting it here. Next, we have Narukami. Naru, at first, I would have put here. Then I spoke to Nuno, and, you know, we talked a bit, and he showed us a top 8. So when you actually play Vanquisher well, it might actually go here. So I think this spot is actually decent. Thanks to Nuno. Otherwise Naru would have been here. But I think it's actually a real deck. Next, Nova Grappler. I think Nova goes into the same category as Aqua. And I would be talking mostly about Victor then. Are people gonna say Razors are better than that? Blow? I think this is a fair place. I don't think it's hyper meta relevant, but it's still a scary deck that you can randomly die to. Nubatama. So this would be Shiranui or Daihuzan. Again, I'm gonna put it somewhere in the middle of the road. It's alright. It can be scary. It's not A and it's not S. I don't know what else to say. Next we have OTT. Oh man, a lot of these things in B are so washy. I don't know. Susanoo can randomly sack you out of the game. They make a big hand. You could also play Tsukuyomi. You could also play the new chick. Clan Collection, the latest one, was mostly premium support for some reason. Like all of the grade 3s were just, this will be really good when you stride over them. Next up we have Pale Moon. Nightmare Dolls is actually pretty scary. I'm gonna put it here. And Bunnies is actually pretty scary. And you can still play Silverthorn? I think Bunnies is where it's at. Maybe Bunny Harry. Still a real deck. I will put it at the bottom of A. And then we have Royal Paladin. I don't know. Somewhere here. I'm not that concerned with Royals. Maybe Things Saver actually. I think Things Saver is probably here. Something to be mindful of. Things Saver and all the things it can do. Some people played Altmile. I saw in BRO. I'm not that afraid of Altmile. I think this is right about where the tiers should be, in my opinion. Again, if you go to an event, I think S and A are decent picks. But I do think that in terms of V, this S tier is far better than A tier to bring. The format is a fair bit more volatile, despite not having over triggers. And so anything you can do to suppress that volatility with just, you know, having a better deck, I think is pretty high impact. But regardless, again, S and A, I think are definitely solid picks. And again, a lot of the things in B, you can still just randomly die to. Again, you can shuffle things around definitely. Maybe some of the stuff in B could go to C. But the S and A categories, I feel, are pretty fair. So yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and I will see you soon. Ciao.